Have you ever wondered how Britain, a small island nation thousands of miles away, became the caretaker of Palestine, a land rich in history and culture? In the aftermath of World War I, a new global order was being carved out. The League of Nations, a precursor to the United Nations, played a pivotal role in shaping the Middle East's political landscape. As part of this reshaping, Britain was awarded a mandate over Palestine, a decision that would reverberate through history. Integral to this narrative is the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a public statement from Britain expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It was a proclamation that would kindle the dreams of some while igniting the fears of others. Thus began the British Mandate, a crucial chapter in the historical saga of Palestine. The British Mandate, a decision made far from Palestinian shores, set the stage for a drama that would unfold over decades. Did you know that the land you walk on, the home you live in, can be swept away by policies made in distant lands? This was the reality for many Palestinians during the era of the British Mandate. The British, who were once the masters of a global empire, had their fingers in many pies, including those of Palestine. Their policies on land ownership and Jewish immigration were a cocktail of controversy, stirring up a tempest of tension between the Arab population and the Jewish immigrants. The British Mandate, established in the aftermath of the First World War, was a time when Britain was entrusted with the administration of Palestine. During this period, land laws were altered, allowing for the sale of large plots of land to Jewish immigrants. This shift in land ownership was not just a simple transaction of property. It was a change that uprooted the lives of countless Palestinians, transforming the landscape of their country and the trajectory of their lives. Concurrently, Britain's stance on Jewish immigration was another contentious issue. The doors of Palestine were thrown open to Jewish immigrants, primarily from Europe. This influx was not merely a trickle but a flood, one that was financially supported by Zionist organizations. The Jewish population in Palestine increased significantly, leading to a demographic shift that was felt acutely by the Arab population. The Arab Palestinians, already feeling the tremors of displacement due to the land policies, now faced the prospect of becoming a minority in their own homeland. They watched as their neighborhoods transformed, their culture diluted, and their voices drowned in the sea of change. However, the most critical point to understand here is that this was not a random sequence of events. It was a calculated move, a strategic game of chess where the players were nations and the pawns were people. The British, guided by their interests and influenced by Zionist funding, were the puppet masters behind this grand performance. As the sun set each day, the landscape of Palestine was gradually changing, and with it, the lives of its people. The stage was set for a conflict that would echo through the annals of history, a conflict that continues to this day. As the world's focus shifted towards the atrocities of World War II, what was happening in the background in Palestine? In the throes of the Second World War, a silent yet significant shift was taking place in Palestine. A surge in Jewish immigration occurred, a movement that was not only substantial, but also illegal. It was a time when the world's gaze was elsewhere, preoccupied with warfare and its aftermath. In this period of global chaos, the plight of the Palestinians was largely overlooked. The surge of Jewish immigrants into Palestine was a blatant violation of international laws and norms. Yet the world chose to turn a blind eye. The question that arises is, why was such a glaring transgression allowed to persist? The answer lies in the aftermath of World War II. The atrocities committed against the Jews during the war had elicited global sympathy. The world was eager to provide a safe haven for the Jewish diaspora, and Palestine was viewed as an ideal refuge. However, this surge of Jewish immigrants came at a heavy cost for the indigenous Palestinians. The influx of immigrants led to the displacement of the Palestinian population. Their lands were seized, their homes were taken over, and their rights were trampled upon. Yet, their cries for justice fell on deaf ears. The world, still reeling from the horrors of the Second World War, chose to overlook the injustices being perpetrated in Palestine. As the world embarked on a journey of recovery and rebuilding, a different narrative was unfolding in Palestine. The demographic landscape was being altered, and the seeds of conflict were being sown. The Palestinians were being systematically displaced to make way for the new settlers, and their homeland was being reshaped beyond recognition. While the world was recovering and rebuilding, Palestine was silently being reshaped. This period marked a pivotal chapter in the history of Palestine, a chapter that set the stage for the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The repercussions of these developments continue to echo in the region even today. Have you ever had a decision made for you without your consent that changed your life forever? This question encapsulates the narrative of the indigenous Palestinians when the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution in November 1947 known as the UN Partition Plan. This plan proposed dividing Palestine into two independent states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under international administration. Now, why was this plan so contentious? Well, the answer lies in its acceptance and rejection. It was welcomed by the Jewish leadership, who saw it as a step towards realizing their dream of a Jewish homeland. On the other hand, it was vehemently rejected by the Arab leaders, who viewed it as an infringement on the rights of the majority Arab population. This dichotomy of acceptance and rejection is a clear indication of the power dynamics at play. The Jewish leadership, backed by global players, had the advantage, while the Arab leaders, representing the indigenous Palestinians, were sidelined. But the disregard for the Arab leaders' rejection was not just a diplomatic snub. It was a blatant dismissal of the rights of the indigenous Palestinians who had been living on this land for centuries. The disregard for the rights of the Palestinians was not just a diplomatic snub. It was a complete and utter disregard for their rights, their homes, and their lives. The plan was implemented, and the map of Palestine started to change. Jewish immigrants flooded into the newly designated Jewish state. The indigenous Palestinians watched as their homeland was carved up, and they were left with a fraction of the land they once called home. And while all this was happening, the world watched. The international community, swayed by the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust, largely supported the creation of a Jewish state. Yet they turned a blind eye to the plight of the Palestinians, who were being displaced from their homes and lands. The world watched as the map of Palestine was redrawn without the consent of its people. What happens when those who create chaos simply walk away from it? Picture this. It's the late 1940s. Britain, the once mighty empire, is withdrawing from Palestine, leaving behind a legacy of turbulence and controversy. This wasn't just a casual step back. This was a retreat, a calculated abandonment of responsibility. For decades, Britain had been the puppet master, pulling the strings of a complex and contentious situation. But as the situation grew increasingly volatile, Britain chose to wash its hands of the matter, leaving the indigenous Palestinians to grapple with the aftermath of their controversial policies and actions. Britain's withdrawal wasn't a sudden decision. It was a slow, calculated process, marked by a series of strategic moves. The first major step was the referral of the Palestine question to the United Nations in 1947. This was a clear indication that Britain was no longer interested in or capable of maintaining control over the rapidly deteriorating situation. This decision was not without consequence. The referral to the UN led to the controversial Partition Plan, a decision that would further fuel the fire of conflict between the Jewish immigrants and the indigenous Palestinian population. The plan, which was accepted by the Jewish leadership but rejected by the Arab leaders, was implemented nonetheless, disregarding the rights of the Palestinians. As Britain finally withdrew, the last of its troops sailing away in 1948, they left behind a legacy of displacement, conflict, and an uncertain future for the Palestinians. The indigenous population was left to grapple with the consequences of Britain's actions, their homeland forever changed, their rights disregarded. The British withdrawal from Palestine is a stark reminder of the power dynamics that often dictate the course of history. It's a lesson in responsibility, or rather the lack thereof. It's a testament to the long-lasting effects of colonialism and an exploration of the complex dynamics of power and control. As Britain sailed away, they left behind a legacy of displacement, conflict, and an uncertain future for the Palestinians. In the grand theater of history, are we, the audience, ever shown the entire act? As we wrap up our deep dive into Britain's involvement in Palestine, we're left grappling with the weight of history's unseen narratives. We've unearthed Britain's contentious land and immigration policies, fueled by Zionist funding, which led to a surge in Jewish immigration and the displacement of indigenous Palestinians. We've delved into the shadows of World War II, illuminating the overlooked surge in illegal Jewish immigration and the world's indifference to this blatant disregard for Palestinian rights. We've scrutinized the UN partition plan, accepted by Jewish leaders but rejected by their Arab counterparts, yet executed nonetheless. Finally, we've exposed Britain's cowardly withdrawal, leaving behind a legacy of conflict and displacement. This historical exploration challenges us to question the narratives we've been fed. As we peel back the layers of history, we find ourselves questioning, are we passive consumers of history or active questioners of it? If you're intrigued by the unconventional, eager to challenge historical norms and ready to explore the charted, but with a different lens, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time,